بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما تعلمنا وزدنا من فضلك علما وتعليما إنك على كل شيء قدير ربنا آتنا من لدنك رحمة وهيئ لنا من أمرنا رشدا Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Questions come to the mind at the onset and the coming of the blessed month of Ramadan, a month of mercy, forgiveness, salvation, a month of transformation, a month of the realization of a person's dreams. Questions come to the mind. What can I do to make the most of Ramadan? What can I do to please Allah the most in Ramadan? What does Allah want from me in Ramadan? What is the significance of fasting? What is the significance of this very month? Questions through which we connect to our purpose and we focus our energies and we focus our efforts to avail ourselves of the immense generosity of the Lord of the worlds, Jalla Jalaluhu. Inshallah ta'ala, in this presentation we will tackle these questions, not from theory, not from philosophies, not from my mind, not from anyone else's mind, not from a man, but rather from the Lord of men, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explained, along with instructing us to fast in Ramadan, Allah explained what the significance of this month is and what it is that we have to be focusing on as we make it through this month. In verses 183 to 188 of Surah Al-Baqarah. And inshallah ta'ala we'll explore those verses together shortly. As we look at these verses, I want you all to bring to mind the tremendousness of the speech and the tremendousness of the speaker. Imam Al-Ghazali mentions these as the two primal acts we do before we interact with the Quran. We should bring to mind that these are words which if revealed to a mountain it would crumble. And these are words which if received by the believing heart, the skin trembles. And we bring to our mind that these are the words of the creator of every atom and every soul. And he created every soul for a purpose. And he speaks to those souls and informs them of that purpose, and he shows them and he guides them. And so listen to these verses as Allah speaking to you. As Allah speaking to you. And you'll note in these verses something very, very amazing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't speak to his slaves, I am the Lord, you must fast, end of story. The Quran is not a dead book of do's and don'ts which you read and put them aside and get on with your lives. The Quran doesn't tell you what's good, it pulls you to what's good. It doesn't tell you what's bad, it repulses you from what's bad. And we'll see in these verses together, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't just tell us to fast, He gives us so many reasons to fast. And He makes the fasting so easy and makes the instruction so compassionate that when you finish with these verses you feel ashamed not to be fasting. You feel, I really want to start today. And this is something of the mercy and the rahmah and the tarbiyah of the Quran, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His addressing the slaves. Inshallah ta'ala. So we look at these passages together and we'll see what we can learn. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts the passage in Surah Al-Baqarah by the address يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, O you people who have believed. This address comes in front of important instructions. It's an address where everyone who has this great blessing and this great rank of which we'll speak today, of Iman, Allah addresses them, each of them. O you people who have this great rank, listen now. An instruction is coming to you which is from this belief that you've professed. And so if this belief of which you've professed is a true belief, then you must listen carefully at what's coming to you next. So hearken to this call, O believers. And so we listen. And what does Allah say? كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ. Fasting has been ordained on you. It's an imperative, it's an instruction which is emphasized. There's something very important you have to do, and it's fasting. And it ties with this belief that you've professed. It is the completion of this belief and an immense expression of this belief. And then Allah says, كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ. It's been inscribed on you like it was inscribed on those before you. Why the comparison? Scholars mention different reasons for this comparison. Among them they say, as you'll see, these verses are full of mercy. That fasting, it's okay, you guys can do it, come. This is the general mood we're going to be seeing. So when Allah says it's like people before you have been doing it as well, it makes it easier. Because you know that many others have been doing it as well. If you imagine, you were the only medical student in the whole world, would you be able to do it? Years and years and years, not sleeping properly, not eating properly, memorizing all these facts, you'd probably give up. But if your uncle went to medical school, and your dad went to medical school, and your granddad went to medical school, and your cousin went to medical school, and your prospective mother-in-law needs you to go to medical school, and so on, it becomes a bearable burden because the whole world is doing it. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, people have been doing it for a long time. It's something which you are able to handle. As well as it also, we're going to see, like we said, Allah pulls people from a variety of motives in these verses. Whatever kind of person you are, you're going to feel pulled by these instructions. And so some people are pulled by a sense of showing Allah, I'm better. I want to be in the front of the queue with you. I don't want to be at the back of the queue. And so Allah is saying, previous people have fasted for me. The children of Israel have fasted for me. People before them have fasted for me. Are you not going to fast for me as well? And we're going to say, no, Allah won't be at the front, but we're going to fast for you also. So it's pulling us into the instruction. And a third benefit of this comparison, the ulama say, is the idea that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed different laws to different peoples in different times. As the needs of humanity changes, the laws change. But fasting hasn't changed. Allah put fasting on those before you, and put fasting on you. And so there's an intrinsic benefit in the act of fasting. It's a very beneficial act, and Allah will tell you that benefit right now. So listen carefully, O you who believe. And Allah ends this verse by saying, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. It is expected and hoped that you will be people of taqwa. That is the primal objective of the act of fasting. Taqwa is of the most celebrated words in religion. It's of the highest ranks that a slave of Allah aspires to. And its meaning returns back to protecting oneself from the anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Its meaning returns back to being conscious, being aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in one's actions, when one is alone, when one is in front of people. Its meaning returns back to a deep sense of integrity, an idea that there are principles you hold no matter what. These are the people of taqwa with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they have the greatest promises. Open any verse of the Quran, or any page, or any other page, you'll find a tremendous promise for the people of taqwa. Hudan lil muttaqeen. The Quran opens. This is a guidance for this group of people. And so Allah is saying, this is the greatest of human ranks. This fasting will take you there. This fasting will take you there. It will teach you a sense of integrity, a sense of principle, which you put above your desires. When people are looking, when people aren't looking. In that very desire, which is the first desire you were born with. When you came out of the womb, what did you want? You wanted milk. So your most primal need of food and drink, Allah, your most intimate needs, Allah is saying, suppress it for a bit. And remember me, and you'll benefit. Oh, you believers. And so with this initial pull, then we're interested, because we're people of Iman, and we aspire to the highest ranks of taqwa. And so we're listening, oh Allah, so when is the fast going to happen? What are the rules? And the next verse, what does Allah say? Opening words, أَيَّامًا مَعْدُودَاتٍ. Just a few days. Allah is saying, I have this instruction for you, it's good for you, and the first thing He tells you is, it's not very long. You have to fast for years and decades, it's just a number of days, so do it. When are the days? Before Allah even tells you the days, He says, oh, and if you can't do it, it's okay. فَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْكُمْ مَرِيضًا أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ فَعِدَّةٌ مِّنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرٍ. Whoever among you is sick or on a journey, then just make up the numbers from other days. So Allah is saying, I'm not going to tax you with what you can't bear. But it's just a few days, and if you have issues, you can make it up later. But fast. So the mercy and the compassion is overflowing as Allah speaks to you in these verses. And the verses are pulling you to your own advantage, not Allah's advantage. وَعَلَى الَّذِينَ يُطِيقُونَهُ فِدْيَةٌ طَعَامُ مِسْكِينٍ. The ulama say when the instruction to fast was first revealed, the Muslims had no, or the Arabs rather, the people who Islam came to in the beginning, they had no prior background in the act of fasting. It seems fasting is alien to pagan traditions. People don't normally avoid food for the sake of a statue. Rather, they feed the statue. They have their own ways of their nonsense. And so it was a new kind of an act. And so in the beginning, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it easy for them, and He gave them a choice, which is you fast, but if it's hard for you, then you can move to something else, which is feeding someone instead. And so this was in the beginning, and this was then abrogated, and when the Muslims got used to it, that there was no other option. But again, even the instruction came with ease and mercy. Those who are able can still feed a ransom, which is feeding someone poor. فَمَنْ تَطَوَّعَ خَيْرًا فَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَهُ. If you feed even more, it's better for you, but better than that, وَأَنْ تَصُومُوا خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. But better than all of that is that you fast. If only you understood. If only you knew. And so fasting has tremendous benefits. And if we knew those benefits, we would never choose anything over the act of fasting. Over the act of fasting. The ulama mentioned many, 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 many things about controlling the ego, about controlling oneself, about appreciating one's food, appreciating the blessings that we enjoy so forgetfully and so carelessly, about weakening, they mention, the blood veins through which the devil flows through a person's body, i.e. it weakens his own control and the control of the ego. And of the greatest benefits, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's a hadith Hadith Qudsi, where the Prophet ﷺ says that Allah says, every action of the son of Adam is for himself. He does it, he gets his reward. Except for fasting, of all the acts. It is mine, and I repay it. What does that mean? The ulama say, fasting is a very dear act to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Because there's nothing to it except self-denial. There's no act you're doing. You're not going anywhere. You're not doing anything. It's a pure act of self-denial for the sake of God. So it's a very pure internal expression. No one's looking at you doing. You're not doing anything for anyone. No one's seeing anything. There's no ritual you're performing. You're just going through the day, denying yourself. That's the only what this act is, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves this action from His slave. He said, this is something dear to me. I will repay it. Now Allah repays everyone, but they say it's a reference to a very special reward. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala multiplies good deeds by 10 times and multiple times, but they say fasting has a magnificent multiplication with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And others have explained that Allah says it's mine, means He won't let anyone take it away from you. On Judgment Day, and we'll come to this inshallah, people who have wrongs and grievances amongst themselves, you wronged someone, you stole from someone, you insulted someone, you won't get into paradise until we pay back each other. If you don't do it in this life, it will happen on Judgment Day. People will take your good deeds in return for your insults. If no good deeds left, you're in trouble. And we ask Allah's protection from being in trouble on that day. And so, some ulama say except for fasting, because Allah said this is His. So He won't let anyone take it away from you. Why does fasting have a tremendous multiplication? The scholars say because fasting is the purest expression of a virtue which the Quran is full of its praise, and that virtue is the virtue of sabr. And Allah says in the Quran, يُوَفَّ الصَّابِرُونَ أَجْرَهُمْ بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ. Those who are people of sabr are given their reward without any limits. They just pay back, a tremendous payback from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What is sabr? It's translated as patience. It's a bit more than patience. It returns back to this idea of integrity I mentioned earlier, this idea of what there's principles that you hold and you force yourself to follow them regardless of what you're feeling. Imam al-Junayd said sabr is swallowing something bitter without showing it on your face. It was a bit of a bite, but your principles and your values are more important to you. And so sabr is the basic act of self-transformation. It's through sabr that a person resolves to wake up in the morning for Fajr or before Fajr, and he fights his desires to sleep because his purpose is greater than his fear. These are the people of sabr. Their purpose is greater to them than what they fear and what they're afraid of, and they go on for their purpose. Someone who's addicted to something unlawful, how can he possibly break out of that except through this virtue of sabr? He has a value and he fights everything inside of him to uphold that value. And so fasting is nothing but that. It's nothing but that. You feel your hunger and you hold on for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we, in this year, have been blessed with a tremendous opportunity. And what is that opportunity? It's fasting in the middle of summer. Fasting in the middle of summer. Fasting in the middle of summer is not like fasting in the middle of winter. It's not like that physically, and so it won't be like that spiritually either. There are gifts in fasting in the summer that are peculiar to fasting in the summer. And there are gifts in the winter that are peculiar to the winter. But right now we're in the summer months. And so my advice to myself and all of you is to take this fast with this resolve to be real men and real women for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and not to be like children. Because Allah loves sabr, people who are clear on their purpose and they're not bothered by the difficulties they face on the way. So what does that mean? It means we don't complain to anybody. We don't moan, we don't groan, we don't say, when's iftar coming? We don't say, I can't wait. We don't say, oh, my tummy is rumbling and grumbling. This is the work of children. Ramadan's not a month for children. Even the children, we encourage them to grow up in Ramadan. Ramadan's a month for men and a month for women. And so my advice to myself and all of you is focus on this virtue of sabr, because it's the key to every self-transformation. It's the key to the realization of every gift you've ever wanted in your life. It's the key to taqwa. And so we're going to resolve in the morning, oh Allah, I'm denying myself food and drink for your sake on this hot day, on this long day. Give me the strength to do it, and please be pleased with me. That's all I want. And whatever comes in the day, we have our back straight. We go through life as if people don't know what's going on. And the weaker you feel on the inside, the stronger you act on the outside. And there will be gifts of iman you will not find in an act other than this act, if this is how we approach it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alam. So please feel the barakah of fasting in the summer, and don't feel its burden. And inshallah ta'ala you'll find a tremendous wind from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this month. It will cover you, and I hope it will cover me, and it will cover all of us, inshallah ta'ala. So after all of this, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, when is this fast actually happening? Allah says, Shahru Ramadan. That's the month. That's the month. Shahru Ramadan. What's so special about Ramadan? Allah tells you as well. There's no secrets here. الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان. The month in which the Quran was revealed, a guidance for men, and a clarification of the guidance and of the criterion. So what's happening here then? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has days in which tremendous signs have come to the people on the earth. We call them the Ayyamullah, the days of God. And we commemorate them in acts of worship to remember these great significant events of history, to tie us back to Allah's favors. Among them is the Hajj. What is the Hajj? Why do we sacrifice on Eid? We remember and we connect to the great sacrifices of the family of Abraham in these rites. We fast on Ashura. Why? Because we remember and we connect to the great favor of Allah to the children of Israel when He saved them from Fir'aun and they crossed the sea. And so what blessing is greater to the people of the earth and the people of the universe than the revelation of the final book? Than the revelation of the final book. And so Allah ties us with this event till the end of time, that we should never ever forget the greatest thing that happened to our lives, which is the prophethood of Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. And so Ramadan is, so what are we saying? We're seeing two separate things now. We're seeing fasting as an intrinsic act of worship with tremendous benefits of purification, and we're seeing a month in which the Quran was revealed for guidance. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen that this month of fasting and purification should be in that month of the Quran. Should be in the month of the Quran. And so the fasting is not just an act for the benefits I've mentioned, but it's to commemorate the guidance. So there's a double thing happening here. And that's why Ramadan is always known as the month of the Quran. That's why I said winter has its barakah. What's the barakah? It's long nights of Quranic recital. And the summer has its barakah, it's long days of fasting for the sake of God. Everything is barakah. You never lose out with Allah as long as you have your mind straight on what you're doing. But remember this idea, because the early Muslims have never divorced or separated Ramadan from the Quran. It's a month to go back to the Quran, to recite the Quran, to study the Quran, to review the Quran, to remember what you've forgotten of the Quran, to connect with the Quran. If you don't do that, you don't understand why we're fasting in this month. It's a month of commemorating guidance, being grateful for guidance, being grateful for Islam. This is the point. This is the spirit, as we'll see. And Allah Himself says. Then Allah again repeats. If you can't do it, He says, فَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْكُمْ مَرِيضًا أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ فَعِدَّةٌ مِنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرَ. If you're sick, you're on a journey, make it up later. You're not going to be asked to do what you cannot do, but make up the days. And here Allah does not repeat. If you have a choice, you can feed someone. So that choice is gone now. That was for the earlier community, whereas the fasting was eased onto them. Now there's no choice, there's fasting. What does Allah say? يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرَ. Allah wants ease for you. Allah wants ease for you. Allah created you to honor you and enter you into His paradise. The Muslim and the Mu'min are the manifestations of Allah's extreme mercy. And Allah is saying these benefits of taqwa and sabr and self-transformation, you will never find them in an easier process than this process of fasting. Look at these old ancient pagan rituals. What do their priests do? They stand in the sun for 7 years and they vow to walk in a valley for 8 months. And they do all these actions. They think they're doing great. Allah is asking you a very simple act, full of ease, and He'll give you better than what He gives them. Allah wants ease for you, so fast. وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْعُسْرَ. He doesn't want to put hardship on you. He is the merciful Lord. He's not taxing you because He wants to torture you. He's taxing you because He's going to honor you. And this process is your honor itself. And it's your entry into the true manhood of religion and the true womanhood in religion. وَلِتُكْمِلُ الْعِدَّةِ. And He wants you to make up the number. It's a prescribed medicine. You have to complete the course. If you're sick, it's okay. He's not going to ask you to fast when you're sick. If you're traveling, He won't ask you to fast when you're traveling. You're menstruating, you don't fast when you're menstruating. But make up the number. Make up the number so you get this benefit. وَلِتُكَبِّرُ اللَّهَ عَلَى مَا هَدَاكُمْ. He wants you to magnify Allah because of what He guided you. When you go through this month, praise Allah and thank Allah for the bottom of your soul that He made you Muslim. You have to understand, and I have to understand, there's no one luckier on the face of this earth than the believer. If we don't understand that, we don't know what we have. We don't know what we have. We're like someone who's spent his whole life in bed, didn't realize he had legs that he could actually walk on. Or spent his whole life walking, didn't realize he actually was able to run. We have something really, the greatest thing a person could dream of is the blessing of Islam, and the blessing of Muhammad, and the blessing of the Quran. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. This is the month to realize that blessing. Through worship, through reciting the Quran, and through really saying, oh Allah, I thank you for this guidance. I thank you for Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. I thank you for this Quran. And I would have been lost, and in darkness, and in misery, and in bitterness, and in misguidance, and in purposelessness, and in all the depression that comes from purposelessness, was not for this guidance. That's the soul of Ramadan. That's the soul of Ramadan. لِتُكَبِّرُ اللَّهَ عَلَى مَا هَدَاكُمْ. Magnify Allah. Say Allahu Akbar. Because of what He guided you, especially on the days of Eid. The days of Eid at the end of Ramadan are days of Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, walillahi alhamd. When you make those takbirs on Eid, at the end of the month, bear this verse in mind. After a month of this great blessing, glorify Allah and say, oh Allah, I thank you for this month. And I thank you for this religion. وَلَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ. This is it, that you will be grateful. That you will be grateful. And the gratitude of guidance is the primal focus here. But there's the gratitude of everything which comes along with Ramadan. Because we appreciate our food, we appreciate our blessings. When we break our fast, we appreciate the coolness in the summer months. And so part of that gratitude is spending of that food. You appreciate your food. So Ramadan has always been a month of feeding, a month of sharing, a month of charity, The Prophet ﷺ would become extremely generous. He always was extremely generous, but even more so in the month of Ramadan. This is from the gratitude of the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then Allah says, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. When my slaves ask you about me, verily I'm near. أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ. I answer the call of the caller when he calls on me. Raise your hands, talk to me, I answer, I'm near. And Allah is saying this in general, but it's coming in between the verses of Ramadan. So what's Allah saying? Make it a month in which you speak to me. I will give you. But then what does He say next? I answer the call of the caller when he calls. فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا لِي. So let them answer my call. وَلْيُؤْمِنُوا بِي. Let them believe in me. لَعَلْهُمْ يَرْشُدُونَ. That they will be guided. You feel really ashamed, don't you? When one who created you gave everything you have, you've given him nothing, he has no need for you, he answers your call. And then he's saying, well, answer my call. And he's given us everything. What shame do we have when we don't answer his call, when he calls on us to do something? And so like I said, every possible motive, every possible thing within us, every button within us is being pressed by these verses. Or people have any sense of decency, answer my call. I answer your call when you turn to me. And the call of God is not for His benefit. يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اسْتَجِيبُوا لِلَّهِ وَلِلرَّسُولِ إِذَا دَعَاكُمْ لِمَا يُحْيِيكُمْ. O you who believe, Allah says in Surah Al-Anfal, answer the call of Allah and His Messenger when they call you to what gives you life. The call to God is not the call to His benefit, it's call to your life. So answer His call and you'll be guided. The next verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He talks about what you can do at night. He says, أُحِلَّ لَكُمْ لَيْلَةَ الصِّيَامِ الرَّفَثُ إِلَى نِسَائِكُمْ. In the nights of Ramadan, it's halal for you to go to your wives and enjoy them as Allah has made halal for you. هُنَّ لِبَاسٌ لَكُمْ وَأَنْتُمْ لِبَاسٌ لَهُنَّ. They're an adornment for you and an adornment for them. This is the month. It's not a month of self-denial. That's what Allah is saying. The nights are for you. I'm not asking you. Take the nights as you wish. عَلِمَ اللَّهُ أَنَّكُمْ كُنْتُمْ تَخْتَانُونَ أَنفُسَكُمْ فَتَابَ عَلَيْكُمْ وَعَفَى عَنْكُمْ. This is referring to an incident or some incidents. Allah knows you were deceiving yourselves and He's relented to you. The Muslims used to believe in the beginning that once you slept at night, even let's say it's at 12 o'clock, that you can't now have intercourse or food for the rest of the day. Instead of from Fajr, the thought is from when you go to sleep. So they were in the beginning, they were being extra strict on themselves and they weren't able to carry it out. And so Allah saying, Allah knows what you were doing and He's forgiven you. They used to try to be strict and they couldn't keep up with it. So Allah saying, I've forgiven you that. Rather, this is the rule. Now what is the rule? Allah says, فَالْآنَ بَاشِرُهُنَّ وَابْتَغُوا مَا كَتَبَ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ. Go to your spouses and seek what Allah has ordained for you of children. This is a blessing in the month of Ramadan. وَكُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا. Allah is saying what? Eat, drink. حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَكُمُ الْخَيْطُ الْأَبْيَضُ مِنَ الْخَيْطِ الْأَسْوَدِ مِنَ الْفَجْرِ. Eat and drink until the white thread of dawn is distinct from the black thread of the dark. Meaning dawn, Fajr, the time we call Fajr. What's interesting here is that there's an instruction to eat and drink as well. We learn in Islam, we don't have a God corner and then our corner. That's not how it works in this religion. There's God and there's life for the sake of God. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we serve Him through all of these things. In the daytime, He says don't eat, we say, oh Allah, we're not going to eat. In the nighttime He says eat, we say, oh Allah, we're going to eat. And so just like we worship Allah by not eating in the daytime, we worship Allah by eating in the evening. And eating out of gratitude. And eating out of gratefulness. Allah loves that. And so don't think this is your time and that's His time. It's all His time and it's all your time. Because it's all benefit that comes back to you. The Prophet ﷺ said, verily Allah is pleased with His slave that he should eat a bite and praise Allah for it. And drink a sip and praise Allah for it. So when we eat, it's just a new act of worship of gratitude. And so eat and be grateful. And that's what Allah wants from you. And the Prophet said, ﷺ, listen to this carefully, the grateful eater is on the same level as the patient faster. Acts of worship, they're all acts of worship. And so if you're with your spouse in the evening of Ramadan, and you're eating in the evening of Ramadan, do it with gratitude for what Allah's made halal for you. And you'll find a barakah in that, like you found in your day of fasting. In your day of fasting. Now, and then Allah says, ثُمَّ أَتِمُّ الصِّيَامَ إِلَى اللَّيْلِ. And then continue your fast until the evening. until the sunset. We even worship Allah. The fasting, the sleep of the fasting one is worship, some of the ulama have said. So don't ever think your worship is stopping. It's just changing from state to state, gratitude to patience, fasting to eating, for the sake of God. Allah says, وَلَا تَبَاشِرُوهُنَّ وَأَنْتُمْ عَاكِفُونَ فِي الْمَسَاجِدِ. Don't go to your wives when you are in the i'tikaf, which is a worship, which is we have performed in the last 10 days of Ramadan. Then Allah says, تِلْكَ حُدُودُ اللَّهِ. These boundaries I've drawn, they are the limits of God. فَلَا تَقْرَبُوهَا. Don't come near them. Don't come near them. Now I've laid out your boundaries. Don't cross the limits. Don't cross the limits. And so now, anyone moved with a sense of fear of consequences will stop. كَذَلِكَ يُبَيِّنُ اللَّهُ آيَاتِهِ لِلنَّاسِ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَّقُونَ. Just like that, great clarification. That's how Allah explains His verses to people, that they may be people of taqwa. Look how Allah has spoken to your soul. Look how Allah has spoken to your soul. He's spoken to your desire for taqwa. He's spoken to the call of faith. He's spoken to your desire to compete. He's spoken to your desire to be number one with Him. He's spoken to you with the ease. He's spoken to you with your own desire to be purified, your own gratitude for guidance, the month of the Quran. He's spoken to you the language of shame, answer the call. He's spoken to the language of fear, these are the limits. He's spoken to you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with everything that moves your soul because He created it. These are the verses of God, and that's how He explains His signs to people. And so anyone with an ounce or a fraction or an atom of any inkling of decency in their heart is pulled towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why the believers, if they connect with the Quran, they're always on guidance. Because the Quran will always pull their souls to what's best for them. The next verse is not actually about Ramadan. But look at how it connects. وَلَا تَأْكُلُوا أَمْوَالَكُمْ بَيْنَكُمْ بِالْبَاطِلِ. And don't eat wealth of each other lawfully. Don't eat the wealth of others unlawfully. And then the verse continues. Look at the connections of the Quran. We're talking about avoiding food. Next verse says, and by the way, don't eat the haram. So there's still a connection. Now what's the connection? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has no need for you to avoid things that are normally lawful for you, which is food, while you still engage in things that are unlawful for you. What's the point? And so the last discussion here is a discussion of we have to follow an elevated code of conduct in Ramadan. If we want the benefit, then what's the point? We waste our time every day like we used to before Ramadan. We gossip about other people like we used to do before Ramadan. We listen to nonsense, we talk nonsense, we speak nonsense, we insult people. Where's the medicine going to come? If you've blocked all the pathways of light to your heart, then what's the point of shining a torch after that? And I'm not saying don't fast if you're not going to stop backbiting. All I'm saying is realize that there's work of conduct that has to happen as well. The basic rules of conduct. Hadith, whoever does not leave false talk and practicing it, Allah has no need for him to leave his food and his drink. Allah has no need to leave his food and his drink. One of the early Muslims, he said, when you fast, then let your ears, your eyes, your tongue fast from lying and from what's impermissible. Let your ears not listen to insults and gossips and backbiting. Let your tongue, especially backbiting, the scholar said, this rips the fast. Speaking ill of others behind their back rips the fast. So we've got to hold that tongue. Insults, fighting, hot-headedness. These are all the opposite of the patience we're trying to acquire right now. And that's why it's a school, because in the summertime you're going to get impatient, you're going to get angry, people are angry, you're going to start fighting. So this is all part of the school of control, integrity, values, and holding them above your desires. In the name of these values, these goals, and these objectives we've been speaking of. Let nobility and tranquility cover you. You're in an act of worship throughout the day, remember that. Don't make your fasting day and your non-fasting day the same. This is the end quote of Jabir. Let there be a difference. You're fasting today. Like when we go on Hajj, we wear the ihram. It reminds us that although I'm not right now doing something, because the Hajj takes days, there's time when you're sleeping and eating. It reminds you, oh, but I'm in an act of worship right now. I'm not in my normal civilian outfits. Something has to be different about me. Remember, the fasting is like that. And there were people in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, two ladies, they weren't able to fast and actually vomited blood. And it was a sign because they were backbiting. And their fast, they broke it on backbiting. They broke its value and its reward on backbiting. And so the last thing is, We must respect the rights of people, the money of people, the honor of people. We must observe a conduct for the sake of these benefits to happen. For the sake of these benefits. And that's the subtle connection. Don't eat the wealth of other people unlawfully. Don't eat the wealth of other people unlawfully. And of course, break the fast on halal food. Break the fast on halal food. And so here, alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen, wa sadaqallahu ta'ala al-azim. We finished looking at these verses. And inshallah ta'ala, we've gained many, many insights from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on what to focus on and why we're focusing on it. Inshallah ta'ala, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His guidance, for His forgiveness, for His mercy, and to make this a month in which we truly transform and become His slaves. A transformation that doesn't last for a month, but it's the beginning of a great transformation that stays with us after Ramadan. Wa sallallahu ta'ala ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.